That's weird. Probably shouldn't have. Then DeMarcus Lawrence replied, "Calling me a clown won't change the fact that I told the truth. Maybe he spent less time tweeting and more time winning. I wouldn't have left."
Such nonsense.
Yeah, there was a point, there was like a pivotal play that could have turned the...
But Micah was tweeting.
Micah was tweeting. Hey, and that cost him the game and the season.
Yeah.
And that would cost him DeMarcus Lawrence on the team. So what was your reaction to this?
I have to be on Team Micah on this one.
Really?
On a lot of fronts.
Okay.
First of all, I mean, DeMarcus Lawrence's arc with the Cowboys was kind of a vintage Jerry Jones Cowboys contract and career, which is guy looks good on his rookie deal, a highly drafted player. Mm-hmm. You drag your feet in paying him, so you have to franchise tag him. He then plays awesome on the tag. You tag him again, which then forces you to pay him top of market, and he never reaches those heights again. It's the 2 years leading into his big deal, those 2 years he had 25 sacks. In the 6 seasons since then, he has had 27 sacks. So Micah is correct on many fronts, not the least of which was, like, this contract wasn't there for him with Dallas. This is not, in my opinion, a good contract by Seattle. But more importantly, I don't think when you were one of, and a couple of years, the highest paid player on the team, and the team underachieved, you go to your new team and be like, well, we know that team could never win a Super Bowl, when you didn't really hold up your end of them trying to win a Super Bowl. And it was just unnecessary. Dallas didn't do him wrong. Dallas, they paid him handsomely. He was injured this last year. He hit free agency. Nobody trashed him on the way out of the building. So I didn't see a need for him to be, barking at Micah and mocking the Cowboys. It just seems unnecessary.
Yeah. But so I see it, I see there's no need from both sides. And if I'm looking at this from a Cowboys perspective, where now Micah is still my guy, I don't want him doing that. So yeah, did I think that, Lawrence, that he needed to say what he said? No. Listen, I always choose or always want these guys to choose to kind of take the high road in that regard. Although, from an entertainment standpoint, I'm also all for this as well. But that's why it's always from a fan perspective, I'm like, yeah, man, bring this on, let's go. This is fun, especially during the off season. We got nothing else to talk about. This stuff I usually care a lot less during the regular season, because I'm definitely just meat and potatoes. Let's focus on the games at hand right now. But when it's the off season, it's March. Sure, bring it on, let's go. And these are kind of fun psychological deep dives. Honestly, this is all the other stuff that goes on with a team. And I think I've talked about this a lot. A lot of people who have never really played, in a level where you're really playing with the same guys over an extended period of time, which, you'll probably start hitting when you're at least in middle school or so. There is such a family brother, dynamic that really gets formed over the years and whatnot, and you don't always get to see that on full display, quite frankly, and it's little things like this that really kind of just can magnify that. But like I said, I can look at this from so many different ways. On one side, yeah, I agree, right? You got paid all this money, and now you're on your way out. You could just say, man, I really wish we were able to win with the Cowboys. It just isn't, just not going to happen, unfortunately. And, now I'm moving on to Seattle, excited for that, right? But he definitely did lay some heat towards the Dallas Cowboys, and I get it. But because he's frustrated with here, the problem is you don't really know what was told to him over the years. We don't really know what some of the conversations were taking place. But then you have Micah kind of insert. On one side, you can be like, well, Micah's defending his team and his organization. Don't you want that from a leader? But then it's just kind of listen, man, the way you go back and forth, I this is the problem when you have a podcast or when you're on social media. You feel like you need to speak on everything, right? That your opinion needs to be heard. And I get it, right? I have a significantly smaller, platform than someone like Micah. And like, I can even feel that sometimes, you know, because there's times when people say, when I'll make a video and they're like, oh, good, I was waiting for this. And I was like, oh, you were waiting for my video? Like, that feels pretty good, you know, like, and that excites me. I love that. Like, that makes me feel like I'm doing something right. And again, that's on a significantly smaller scale than someone like a Micah. But I think one of the things of maturing and growing in that aspect is realizing, like, you don't have to speak on everything, or even something little, like something could just be like LOL. I learned that also in the comment section. Sometimes people say some crazy stuff, whether it's just like about a football take in general or about me personally. It's like, sometimes I'm like, all right, let's do this. Let's go back and forth. Let's bring it on, especially if you come at me personally. And other times I just write LOL, or I do like a juggling emoji or something, or just like a, you know, the emoji where someone's just like, they're wearing like a hat and they're like blowing some, like, you know, noisemaker or something, because it's just kind of like, whatever, man. And like in this moment, that's when it would have been better, right? Like, that's what I would have appreciated, something more just like LOL, or just nothing, right? Like, just nothing. And I feel as though that would have been just a smoother path forward, because the problem is this: when you respond the way how Micah responded, is that it just continues to stir up nonsense. And Micah already stirs up nonsense, and the Cowboys franchise as a whole keeps stirring up nonsense. If the Cowboys were a smoother franchise, and so was Micah, and there wasn't this kind of noise all the time, then a comment like this, a disagreement where they're kind of going back and forth, is just kind of like, you know, some of those things, it just kind of happens. And I wouldn't even hold Micah's feet to the fire. The problem is that this is par for the course. This stuff happens all the time, right? You know, I can never get mad at a wide receiver for dropping a pass in a key moment, or someone fumbling in a key moment, when they barely ever fumble and they barely ever drop the ball, you know. And I'm just like, you know, it's just unfortunate that it happened in this moment in time, is what I'll often always say. Devontae dropped the ball against the Commanders, and it was just like, you know, the dude has made such amazing catches throughout his career, especially for the Philadelphia Eagles. What are you're gonna burn it? You know, you're gonna burn him at the stake because he dropped a key pass. It just happens. What are you gonna do? And it's just unfortunate that it happened in that moment in that game. But you know, with Micah, it's just like, it's always something. It's always noise. It's always chaos. And he's also, you know, underperforming in key moments in games, in the playoffs, etc. And so it's just like, you know, it just feels unnecessary. It just feels just like you're making more noise. And there's just nothing else needs to be said. And it's one thing if you were already a champion, that maybe it hits a little harder, or there's a little bit more, not that it hits a little bit harder, but it can feel like, it maybe feels like it just holds a little bit more weight to it. This reminds me of, I can't forget. I forget the other player that it was from the Memphis Grizzlies with Draymond Green. And, you know, Draymond Green is kind of a similar personality in this, you know, in this regard. Also has a podcast, wants to speak on everything that happens. And, you know, he was fighting with the one guy from the Memphis Grizzlies who then, you know, ended up getting traded. And he was just like, dude, you don't understand, man. Like, the dynasty starts when you leave, you know, like when they get rid of you, that's when the team gets good. And it's just like, Draymond was in a place where he could say that because he had already won ring after ring after ring after ring. And it just lands differently. It just lands differently when you're winning. When you're not winning and you're coming up short and you're fundamentally underperforming, like, all this noise is just annoying. I don't care even if, like, well, you're defending the Cowboys and this, that. It's just like, you know what? I don't need you to. I don't need you to. Just silence is better. Just move on. If you thought that he was noise and causing problems, good. Just get him out of the building. He's gone. See you. Bye. Let's move on. You know, like, that's just the way I kind of look at it. And to be clear, it's like, it's not that I even love what someone like a Draymond Green does. It just feels like it's more balanced when you're winning. And the moment you're not winning, the moment you're kind of just like, all right, man, cut this clown nonsense. Like, you know, like you're not what you once were. A little less talking, a little bit more focus on winning games. So it depends. It really depends on the situation. But I mean, you know, that him having this podcast also as well, kind of, you know, there was already comments and people had conversations that they felt that it was a distraction. And then you have someone like a Lawrence pretty much say that, you know, so it's just, I think it's a bad look in a lot of ways for everyone involved, quite frankly. But, you know, I just think if Micah is supposed to be the leader of this team, which is what he's supposed to be, This type of stuff is nonsense. And again, I can compare it also to kind of like the AJ Brown. Like I ripped AJ Brown for some of the stuff that he's kind of said during the season and even off season when he talked about how him and Jalen Hurts were fighting. You know, they kind of had some issues, but they reconciled now. And I'm just like, why are you saying this out loud? Like, I understand you're being interviewed in podcasts and YouTube channels and all that stuff are everywhere, but like, you need not say that. You need not say that. And, you know, just think about what the real leaders, seriously, think about the Mahomeses, the Tom Brady's, the Jalen Hurts. Like, think of these guys who we know are true leaders of a franchise. Do they say these types of comments? They don't. Like, so like, that's kind of your answer right there. Look at the actual leaders of the NFL, the ones that we know that without a shadow of a doubt, everyone's willing to follow behind them. And we just know that they are the bona fide leaders and the voice of their franchise, of their team. And do they do this back and forth? The answer is no. The answer is an emphatic no. And we could say, well, there's multiple ways to lead. Absolutely. It hasn't proven to work for the Dallas Cowboys. That's my point. If the Cowboys were winning, then I would say, yeah, what are you going to do, man? Like, again, I don't love a lot of Draymond Green's stuff. I wish he would talk less. And you know, even when they were in their prime and were winning, it's like, you know, can you cut back? But at the same time, you can make the argument Draymond Green needed that. That's how he tapped into his level of intensity. He had to ride that very, very fine line between slightly going too much and, you know, because you know, if he doesn't push it to that limit, then he only gets to go to 80%. And in order to really get to 100%, he kind of has to go 105%. Like, you can make those arguments. That's not the argument for Micah Parsons here. So it just ends up being more of a net negative from my viewpoint. But at the same time, longtime Cowboy Lawrence, like, you want to see him kind of just leave a little bit more gracefully as well. But again, if I'm looking at it from a Dallas Cowboys perspective, I'm just kind of like, you know, guys, like, you know, you have all these other teams that are making moves. The Minnesota Vikings are making awesome moves. The Philadelphia Eagles just won the Super Bowl. The Washington Commanders are making moves. Like, everyone's getting better. Everything is also smoother. And like, this is what the Dallas Cowboys are doing. You know, the big story of the offseason so far is this nonsense. Great. It's just more nonsense. And, you know, if you're a Cowboys fan, like, what are you supposed to do with this? But those are just my thoughts. I'd absolutely love to hear yours. What do you guys all think? You know, about this back and forth, and, you know, were any lies told? Let me know in the comments below. I read every single comment, so whether you agree with me or disagree with me, either way, let's get in some discussion, let's get in some fights, but ultimately, let's just have some fun. And please do consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I absolutely love to see you part of it. I want to build something that we all genuinely feel connected to, something that we're really excited to be part of. I think we're well on our way to doing it. And please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it really does help the visibility and the algorithm. Thank you so much. See you next time.